Welcome, everybody. This is our Cutting Through the Clutter, what nobody is talking about with respect to coronavirus and the workplace webinar. Very happy that you join us. I am your master of ceremonies. I'm Paul Neuberger, president of the Star Group, and it's a blessing to have you join us here today. And I think, boy, it would be the understatement of all understatements to say this has been a wild month, right? I mean, the world has literally been shifting under our feet, not on a weekly basis, sometimes not even on a daily basis, almost an hour-by-hour basis. And I know a lot of us have been in reactive mode basically ever since. And there's a couple things that we noticed here at the Star Group. Obviously, we're spending a lot of time reaching out to our clients, making sure that they have answers to their questions, making sure that they know that we're a resource to them. Business as usual, I assure you. But there's a couple of things that we've noticed as the weeks have gone by. Number one, we just realized there is a ton of information out there. I mean, boy, you spend 5 minutes on social media, everybody's doing a post about COVID-19. Everybody's putting documents on social media. You get email after email after email after email flooding your inbox with a lot of the news and announcements and things that you should know as a business owner or an executive. And it's just a lot to digest. Not only are you dealing with the fires at your office, not only are you trying to make sure that your employees are safe, your organization is running as effectively and efficiently as possible. Oh, by the way, making sure that cash flow stays net positive. But now you're trying to sift through all of this COVID-19 information. It comes to you from well-meaning individuals, don't get me wrong. But that just adds another layer of complexity, and it all starts blurring together. So one of the things that we aspire to do at the Star Group is to help you cut through the clutter. Of all the information that's out there, of all the information that you're receiving, which information is most important? Which information is most relevant? What information should you in particular be paying attention to? Because you can't pay attention to all of it. It's just impossible. So what we want to do here over the next 90 minutes is help you cut through the clutter, but also to share information that nobody's talking about. You see a lot of the same information out there. But in consultation as an agency, with our producers, with our account managers, and some of our experts, including Jessica and Ron, who we're very pleased to be joined by here this morning, we've realized there's some important information that's not being shared. There's some important information that is not being talked about enough. And unless we start talking about it, and unless we start calling your attention to it, there could be problems that otherwise would not have to come to fruition. So that's one of the reasons we're gathered here today. But I think the last one, and I think this is probably the most important one, we at the Star Group have also known, or at least have also seen, that there's a lot of well-meaning individuals and organizations that are talking at people through emails, through social media, through the other delivery mechanisms and modalities with respect to this information. Here's what you should do. Here's what you should prepare for. Here's how you should protect yourself. Here's what you should pay attention to. Nobody should tell you what you should do. You know your business. You know your situation better than anybody else. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to talk at you. We don't want to throw stuff at you. And we don't want to sit here and just tell you all the things that you should do. Instead, we want to make this conversational. We want to do more listening than talking. And in this time when anxiety is high, stress is high, uncertainty is high, rather than us adding to it by throwing a bunch of stuff at you, let's just slow down, catch our breath, and make our experts available to you to answer whatever question you may have. That's important to us at the Star Group, and we hope that you find value in our time together here today. You came to listen to our experts, Jessica and Ron. Let me introduce you to Ron Humphreys. He has been an occupational safety specialist for over 30 years. He's worked in the manufacturing, insurance, municipal, and construction sectors. He was a safety and security coordinator for a large machine tool company, held various positions in the insurance sector, including vice president of risk control services with the National Workers' Compensation Insurer. He also was a field safety supervisor on large construction projects such as the LIABILITIES Field Redevelopment Project and I-94 construction projects. Ron, it's wonderful to have you. Take it away, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint here. Hopefully I can do that. Hello, everybody out there, and I hope everybody's safe under the circumstances and doing well. When invited to talk about the COVID-19 issue, the attraction was to explore aspects of this which, may not be known, or perhaps at least not very well, or where there may be some confusion, as Paul had talked about. In planning this is opposed to discussion, just reciting what you probably already know well and have also have implemented in your companies now and for some weeks, such as social distancing efforts, hand washing, of course, disinfecting processes, and the like. In other words, some aspects of this issue that haven't been publicized, unless you've had that haven't been well publicized, unless you've been able to devote a lot of your time to this, which in many cases I doubt that you have, because you've been very busy doing everything you possibly can to protect the safety and health of your people. But that's not to say we don't discuss that, or possibly there could be questions on that, and if so, we can certainly discuss. Now, I've worked, as Paul mentioned, on a couple of large job sites, and coincidentally, I am working on one right now. Actually, I'm out the Foxconn site a few days a week helping somebody out as a backup safety supervisor out there. I guess the reason I bring that up is I'm living the COVID-19 experience, if you will, following the rules, having some assistance in developing the rules, such as out on that site, as it's been a learning process, of course, and we still have more to learn. Also, new information, of course, seems to arrive every day. In fact, a couple of things I want to quickly share with you today, I just got within the past 24 hours. Before I get into it here, the angle of the discussion focuses on a few of the hurdles with meeting OSHA compliance. And as I've assisted a few STAR clients having issues with this, I've also brought into the fold here a little bit, preparation for a possible OSHA encounter with COVID. And actually doesn't necessarily have to be COVID, but there are a few things that you should be keeping in tune with your safety compliance, and that's what I want to touch base on. So I hope that there will be a couple of things that I share with you here that, you will find useful. When we talk about OSHA and OSHA compliance, what has OSHA been saying? And I have the ability to talk rather frequently with various OSHA people, and they tell me one thing: follow the CDC. There is no regulation addressing the COVID-19, but there's a lot of shouting going on to establish an emergency temporary standard. In fact, I think it was just yesterday that one of the nurses' unions had a protest in Washington, D.C., and others that are calling for an emergency standard include labor groups and other advocacy groups. OSHA does have enforcement abilities. Gray today with COVID. Most of the focus has been on healthcare for obvious reasons, healthcare and first responders. Not necessarily, and I should probably point out that a good portion of my discussion here is addressing folks in the manufacturing, construction, and some other service sectors without a lot of detail on healthcare, because, again, most of the focus has been in that area, leaving a lot of other employers kind of questioning, well, what is it I should be doing? Again, aside from the things that we know, there are a few things behind the scenes that I thought might be valuable to share with you. When I say reports of enforcement elsewhere, I'm meaning outside of the state of Wisconsin. I can say, in fact, just talking to somebody that was an OSHA compliance officer, recently retired, I asked him point blank, I says, are you aware of any Wisconsin companies or employers having been cited by OSHA for anything related to COVID? And he didn't think there was. Reading about what's going on across the country, there are states where OSHA apparently has been a little bit more active, particularly under their state-run OSHA programs. And this has involved citations, and most of them seem to do with social distancing complaints and a few others. Now, OSHA has the ability, if they so choose, to step up, if you will, enforcement of OSHA compliance under their what we call GDC or General Duty Clause. It's a standard most of you that work in safety would know very well. It's basically a catch-all standard, giving them the ability to enforce basically anything safety and health related in the workplace. And in fact, as you know, a lot of enforcement efforts over the years have actually included what they call consensus standards, such as developed by ANSI and the NFPA and such, that they've used that in maybe more current than the regulations that they have on their books. Now, can this include, again, non-adherence with CDC's recommendations? It certainly could. I made a note just on one article that I read recently that a lawyer representing a deceased worker from a big box store, he had asked OSHA to open an investigation representing the deceased family. And at last read, they had not or were not, but I can't qualify that, but I just thought that was something that I could share with you because obviously this is a very fast-moving target, if you will. Also, there's the issue of OSHA 300 logging with the coronavirus. And what's to say about that? There's a lot of controversy, particularly outside of the healthcare sector. There was just a report or a memorandum that came out last week that talked about employers, again, in construction, manufacturing, and such, are to record injuries, but they're not enforcing. So what does that mean? That means if you, for whatever reason, if you were under the scrutiny of OSHA, at least at this particular time, and you didn't record a COVID case that maybe they thought you should, and again, this is a very broad brush comment here, but they're not supposed to be enforcing it. And I've got a couple of other things with respect to enforcement by OSHA from, or having to do with the non-healthcare sectors. This is likely to receive a whole lot of scrutiny here in the days to come, because how in the heck do you know if you in your company have a COVID-19 positive worker where that worker possibly contracted the infection? It might be another case to say, well, you know, we've got 20 people in our company that are COVID positive. Well, now then the question comes up as to, well, did this occur at work? But again, part of the controversy is that, as I've got listed here, there's no mandates, and there never has been for, say, flu bugs or common colds. If you have a worker that came down with, you know, a flu bug, that was never OSHA recordable. But now it's been brought to the stage here where employers are supposedly expected to record COVID cases. So where that's going to go is a question mark. I could give you my opinions, but they may not be worth much as we go forward on that. One thing I will say is have your OSHA log in good shape. And that's something across the board, you know, COVID or non-COVID related. Because if OSHA would be knocking on your door for an inspection or even the result of an investigation, most of the time the first thing they're going to want to see are your OSHA 300 logs. And if those logs are not up to date, that kind of is the book, you know, the cover of the book, judging the entire book by the cover, which may lead them to want to expand the scope of the reason for their being there. Now, normally, if there's been question about recordability, OSHA generally will say, well, insert it in your log anyway, and then simply line it out later if it's determined that it's not work-related. This is another real gray area considering everything here. And you may choose to do that. It's your call. Or you may choose to say, I don't want to do that. But at my advice, I would suggest you keep some sort of a record, a file on any COVID cases that may be, you know, that may arise, that may be reported to you. Also, there's been discussion about OSHA's bloodborne pathogen standard having relevance to the application with the coronavirus, and specifically that is the infection control measures. So the question here, again, and things to keep in mind is your exposure control plan in good shape? If you don't have one, you should, and that should be written. And another bit of new news that just came out here recently that I heard of is the American Heart Association now has advised a new procedure, if you will, for CPR. And that, again, is very recent, and they advise that, of course, the newer procedures where you're not doing mouth-to-mouth anyway, it's chest compressions, but they advise that you cover the nose and mouth of the victim and to do the same yourself. And the better type of protection, which I'll comment on in a minute, the better. As many of you may have read, there's been complaints all over the place, employee complaints to OSHA, and there's, again, I made relevance to this a minute ago with what OSHA's been doing or what I've been hearing they've been doing elsewhere, is you want to address any complaints you may receive promptly. Again, there's probably a whole lot of things you've already done in your companies to protect your people. Again, distancing, hand washing, hand sanitizing, may even extend to temperature checks, whatever. But amongst all of those, if you have an employee that's complaining and you're not responding to the complaint, that's typically when it gets to OSHA and the employee would file a complaint, and tends to be the leading reason why OSHA will maybe be knocking on your door. Now, one thing just as a side note on this, again, reading various articles, is OSHA has not been responding on site, or at least as frequently as they did. I've heard of more reports where if there is a complaint, an employee complaint, that OSHA is sending a letter to the employer asking them about it and what they've done to correct it. Now, there's been certainly a whole lot of discussion about the coveted N95 mask or respirator. These are NIOSH certified, and many companies, perhaps some of you, had donated your stock or a good portion of your stock to hospitals and clinics, as had been called upon early to help with the shortage of personal protective equipment. Yet these companies, and this is relevant to a client that I worked with that kind of encountered a problem, they still need these types of respirators or PPE for their own work. If it's painting, sanding, welding, whatever, where a certified respirator would be required under OSHA. As well, of course, annual fit testing and training is required for this type of personal protective equipment. But there's a problem that I've found with more and more companies is fit testing is not being done by providers. But anyway, the big question that people have had is fit testing not being provided is what do you do when you have people that obviously need this training annually? And I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Research, including conversations I've had with OSHA here and in Washington, D.C. on this very topic, extends to certified or non-certified respiratory protection. And I think that's something a lot of you have probably read or heard an awful lot about, where first responders and, of course, medical professionals and such need that extra line of protection that the N95 provides. But for the rest of us, we've been getting later advice about cloth masks and people that know how to sew and make their own masks. In fact, my daughter had made me up a couple of very nice ones for my use, especially when I'm out on the job site. Again, it's a fluid topic. Again, that information that had come out earlier that said, the general public does not need to wear masks. And of course, now today the advice is that we do, cloth masks being fine. Now back to fit testing, because this is important for anybody that has employees wearing these respirators, is that fit testing is not being done. At least most of the clinics I've checked with are not doing it. And there's obvious reasons for that, is that procedure can introduce some significant risks of infection. An enforcement directive that just came out about a week ago from OSHA said in some vague description, if you will, that they will not cite companies that are overdue for their annual fit testing. And in fact, that's why I called an industrial hygienist in Washington, because the memorandum didn't actually come out and say that in black and white, but that's what I was interpreting. And he, in fact, told me you should not find an OSHA compliance officer citing a company at this point for being overdue for their fit testing, with the exception that they may be expecting that the employer is following the other requirements under the respiratory standard, that being, of course, your annual training that's supposed to be done, and, your ongoing good faith enforcement, making sure people are protected and wearing that equipment properly and keeping it in a sanitary condition. For new employees, that's a different story. Basically, they say it's on hold until providers would be able to do testing, or some of you may be equipped. I know I do fit testing as one of my services, but I've stopped it as well until getting, a directive that it would be safe to be doing that. The last thing I wanted to share here is OSHA resources. If you haven't checked out the OSHA website, osha.gov, there is a resource I can direct you to here, and it's on the home page, and you will see a bar toward the top of the screen that says Help and Resources. Click on that, and then scroll down to Publications. And there's a book, a 35-page booklet from OSHA that says Guidance on Preparing Workplaces for COVID-19. A lot of it is pretty much just following what the Centers for Disease Control has already published, but it's a good resource for you to check.
So with that being said, Ron, thank you very much. That's a tough act to follow, but if anybody can follow that act, it's Jessica Ollenburg. And so I am going to introduce Jessica. Boy, it has been wonderful to work with Jessica for the period of the last couple of years here at the Star Group. She is a wonderful human being, a very sharp professional, and I'm very fortunate to call her my friend. If you don't know about Jessica, she's an award-winning entrepreneur, legal expert, community leader, and influencer. She's earned honors from CEO Today, Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year program, Arthritis Foundation, legislative officials, and other esteemed high-impact organizations. She's an internationally triple certified educator, author, and consultant. She presents research and visionary solutions to employer clients, for-profit and nonprofit alike, ranging from 1 to 100,000 plus employees. She's called upon regularly by academia, media, and professional development forums to discuss new findings and future forecasts. She's also recognized as one of the longest-standing experts in one of today's fastest-growing fields. An internationally published author, her high-ranking expertise has been showcased by the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fortune, Money, Business Week, CNN, the Washington Post, WorldNews.com, the Business Journal, and more. Just some teeny tiny little organizations you may have heard about. So with that being said, I am going to turn it over to Jessica. Jessica, thank you for being here today. Can't wait to learn from you.
Thank you again, Paul. Quite the intro. And welcome, everybody. So glad that everyone is able to join us today. Ron had some fabulous things to say, and they are so important right now. I know that they're also answering a lot of the questions that came in with the registration. So thank you so much for that, Ron. We were so pleased to see how many people registered that we've already worked with and know and are good friends and allies and clients. And we're also welcoming the new attendees that we haven't had a chance to introduce to equally. And thank you all for joining us. What I am talking about today is the leadership playbook for the new normal. Change is imminent for most. Solutions are available. We already know a great deal. And directed toward our business leaders, staying calm under pressure is your thing. So this is a time to really steer the business, and this could be a time to really shine above and beyond what we consider to be the new normal. Normal isn't always what we aspire to be. Sometimes many of us aspire to be more than normal, and this is an opportunity to do that. Some of the things that shape the perspective that I'm bringing to the table at Ollenburg LLC, we're changing our messages to our clients daily. There's so much new information coming in, and both Paul and Ron have already alluded to that and given some great examples. We have new findings. We have new reactions from people. We have regulatory changes. And each stage of the journey has brought us through a different stage of how we can help and what we're seeing at employers and the experience that we can share. So far, we've been able to help through crisis management, business transformation, risk avoidance, bootstrap finance plays, tactics, and forecasting. Some of the things that we're bringing that are extra helpful in the legal arena are our unique ability to provide court-approved affirmative defense. Courts and regulatory agencies are going to be looking for reasonable care. We know when we have a statute passed that it is largely shaped by case law and the precedents and what happens in the courts. So there is more to be seen, and what will protect our client employers is that they can prove they took reasonable care in compliance. The government does not expect anyone to control the behavior of human beings, but to take reasonable care in setting and establishing clear policies and enforcing them in compliance. So with that, some of the things that we're doing are not only helping with the thought leadership and the business planning and bringing the case studies of decades of experience, but also just creating peace of mind and easing the burden. We know that the relaxed mind is the most productive mind, and it can be very, very challenging to keep a relaxed mind right now. Normally in business, we have to inventory the cost of even considering change versus the benefit of creating that change. So we stick ourselves in the mud. And we do that because we don't know that taking time to think about improvement and think about change is going to be a smart use of our time and energy. A lot of people right now are able and should be thinking about change. This is a great time to figure out the new and improved version of yourself as a business. And what we've done is we've facilitated 15-minute PowerPoint, but this is ultimately just going to be the checklist that's going to help business leaders organize their thoughts. And at the end of that, we're going to refine it into a 4-point business plan. What we are doing is to really frame questions and the opportunities to ask questions at the completion of this, and also offline if there's any assistance to be done as well. So this presentation is really the framework and the scope for follow-up discussion. So in part 1 of planning, here are the thought leadership framework pieces that we want to be looking at. Back to leadership basics, customer demand, future vision, a pivot or a leap, reevaluating brand, culture, and building trust in the new flow of money. We're going to be talking about each of these in a little bit more detail. So with that said, when we look at leadership basics, we're really talking back to ground one. Reconsider all aspects of the business plan because most companies will need to change. A lot of cookie cutter solutions are out there. A lot of cookie cutter solution and sample stores exist, but they're not going to deliver competitive edge. Doing the same as everyone else does not deliver competitive edge. And here's a point that I really want to make. We're seeing a lot of panic because businesses can't feel that they can be able to stay around with a loss of 1 or maybe 2 months worth of revenue. But back in the day, when many of us learned leadership basics, we were taught to have a 3 to 6 month safety net because there are fluctuations. There are variables beyond our control. True, we haven't seen this type of pandemic behavior in our lifetime, but there have been certainly a lot of other interferences, and some of us have seasonal businesses or just have some downtimes, etc. If you succeeded without that 3 to 6 month safety net until now, kudos to your risk tolerance, and look for ways to further success in the best direction for the next phase. Don't give up. That's good stuff. Customer demand. And this we're seeing a decent amount of discussion on, but the answers for everyone are going to be, again, very unique. Do you know tomorrow's customers, their concerns, and how to address their needs? Are your choices and communications providing assurance to your customers and to your customer deliveries? Can you reposition your service or product to address immediate needs of the COVID-19 landscape? And what about e-commerce? So with future vision, does your revised plan build upon or newly engage the relationships that best serve your future? Are the relationships that once served you best the relationships that will serve you best moving forward? Can you see where your best help will come from? Is your supply chain already disrupted and does it need it to change? Another important consideration to that extent will also be, will your supply chain impact how tomorrow's customers and stakeholders perceive your business? A lot of blame shifting going around, and people have very strong opinions about that. Another consideration is about cutting back. Are you cutting back too far now to be feasibly responsive when an opportunity arises? We need to leave enough capacity to be able to achieve our dreams. What have you learned about doing more with less? What can you take that will help you in the future to be more cost effective and revenue efficient? And here comes technology. Technology, which we've seen in action and we've seen not in action. Are you using technology to better advantage without extracting the judgment that you need from key thought leaders? We're automating so many things that we need to start rethinking that. Have we automated too far? Have we eliminated the judgment that we need? Or have we automated too little? As we're learning more and deploying technology in new ways for remote work and e-commerce, what can we take into the future that helps us with long-term cost efficiencies and better deliveries? A pivot or a leap? When I think of a pivot, I think of one foot in place. And that to me reminds me of the Shake Shack example. And then I look at a leap. An example of that would be Lexus. I don't look at Lexus in the people business. I'm on my fourth Lexus. I personally don't buy Lexus because they're in the people business. I'm not sure if anybody else is getting inundated or if that's graph search because I'm a Lexus customer. But the question is, are you pivoting or are you leaping? If you're leaping, are you creating brand confusion or negative imaging? Are you leaping to a place where your existing customers don't perceive that you're solving a problem for them? In doing so, we need to align our brand and culture. As you communicate, morph, protect, envision, consider to what or to whom are you providing extra care? Would that be customers, employees, stakeholders? How are you crafting messages? What does your transition look like from high level? Will your succession planning change? Will your exit planning change? Will there be a wave of mergers and acquisitions that will result from COVID-19's impact on business? And if you prepare for that now, do you improve your options? And of course, the new flow of money. CARES Act well underway. What we were originally learning with the CARES Act was to avoid double dipping because we had choices. Now we're seeing that we're looking at another round of funding, although the first round was certainly depleted. What does that look like? What does it look like in your plan? Money is not disappearing. We're seeing memes. Everyone's losing money. Not true. Money not disappearing. Money's just changing hands in new ways. How can you find your place in the new economy? If you're aiming for loan forgiveness, what is your contingency plan if the loan is not forgiven? And what can you newly accomplish if it is? Or are you still in the hunt for money? Now we talk about the rollout. So we've got nimbleness and scenario planning, empowering data science, people in psychology, managing risks and implementing action. One by one, we're taking these through very quickly. Be nimble and scenario plan. It's true that there is a lot we don't know yet and will be changing, but there's a lot we do know. And there is enough knowledge that we can be scenario planning. We can be contingency planning. Leaders can have a plan. If A, then B. If C, then D. If E, then F. And what creates the ability to move quickly on those decisions and keeps the confidence of others is to have the criteria, the measurements, and the vision for that. Beyond that, we're looking at decision tools. Hopefully there's some data mining. There's some data scientists that are feeding the equation of what we're doing next and what we're deciding are our changes and improvements and our adaptations. But have we empowered? Has each leader empowered the people who are analyzing and compiling that data to know what the benchmarks look like, as well as the range of possibilities and what success looks like? Have we framed enough that they know what information will be relevant? And have we provided them with enough latitude? And again, this is at an organizational level. We're looking at all kinds of aggregate information, but now is the time to really refine that and look at what is relevant to your organization and your future business plan. And we've seen some of this. We see some of this often, and we're certainly seeing some of this right now. Are you delegating too much that requires executive judgment, or are you micromanaging too much where they don't need your judgment? Again, items to be rethought. People in psychology. And Paul touched on this as well, and certainly this is a safety concern. Anxiety, depression, PTSD. Please deploy crisis management, fear diffusion, and palatable answers as assurances. Set up wellness resources. Work with your benefits experts. Hint, star group. And apply the understanding. Is your new business plan best served by the same employees? And will they want to return? Are you properly leveraging what will motivate your next phase employees? Or have those motivators changed because we're targeting perhaps new characteristics in our team demographics? When it comes to remote work, we're seeing a variety of great success and some items that certainly need some adjustment. We're working with different work styles of different people and different types of jobs. I mean, here, a great job description can do a lot to hold people accountable and give them the clarity to do their job well remotely. But are we isolating people who need more in-person teamwork long term? And how do we choose if we're going to keep remote work into our platforms for business? 6 Hats, Appreciative Inquiry, and Brainstorming are 3 great programs that we use to get leaders really coming up with some great solutions and doing so in a collaborative fashion. And lastly, managing risks, liabilities, and compliance. We've got the FFCRA. We've got risks of contracting COVID-19 on your watch. Screening for contagion, sanitizing and distancing, observing government directives as reasonable care, requiring PPE, eliminating unnecessary travel, heightened care for vulnerable population, and all of these items are being looked at in addition by ADA, EEOC, HIPAA, and more. So bringing it down to our 4-point plan for leaders, and yes, that was a lot of information, but they're all questions that need answers in order to get to this point. Reevaluate and determine your business plan, including your scenario options, is job 1. 2, craft a strategic, clear, and effective message for each stakeholder audience. 3, know and manage risks and liabilities. 4, collect data, determine benchmark criteria, and begin forward prudent movement with performance management. And a big reason that this 4-point plan has a place right now is that small to mid-sized businesses, you're not a juggernaut of a company that relies upon aggregate and high volume demand. You don't need complete economic recovery to do well. You just maybe need to make some pivots, some shifts, some changes, and you only need to see enough economic recovery to find enough of a foothold for you. So there you have it. A lot of information broiled down to a 4-point plan and queuing up what I hope will be a lot of questions. And I know I'll be available to answer those questions. So, and please know that we're also available to help you craft your blueprint offline at another time. But we're here for questions. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Jessica. I know I raised the bar extra high for you, but you surely did not disappoint, my friend. Neither you, Ron. And what we're going to do now is we're going to enter the Q&A portion. I've received some questions via chat. I've had some questions sent to me via email. All right, so let's start with this. So between Jessica and Ron, I'll let you guys fight over the first question. This is it legal to start testing all incoming employees' temperature each day using a touchless thermometer?
The importance of that is to be very equitable to avoid any ADA or EEOC or HIPAA infractions. What we're recommending is that the temperature is taken at the start of a shift. It's taken for everyone. There are also some questions that can be asked as well that are approved by the CDC because they're common to COVID-19, so they fall under pandemic rules. And we suggest that some of these questions might also be asked because not everyone who has COVID-19 is exhibiting a fever.
Ron, would you have anything to add to that, or was that a pretty good answer to that question?
You know, more companies are doing this, obviously, for the protection of their people. And certainly there's nothing I can come up with that would say that would not be an appropriate thing to do.
Perfect. So one of the questions that just came in through Tim is, what happens if an employee refuses? So you want to take that temperature, you want to make it equitable, but what if an employee says no? Then what?
The answer from me would be that the answer lies in how the policies have been set up. Every employer has a responsibility to communicate what these rules are in advance so that individuals know what the conditions of their employment and their qualification to work are. So if that is properly established, then an individual who refuses can be disqualified from work. There are some risks to that. I mean, there are certainly some complaints that it may have been an ADA or EEOC protected that could create some argument. But at the end of the day, the best risk management is to, again, implement that reasonable care, get a third-party legal expert, such as what we might do, to be able to sign off on your policies so that you can demonstrate that reasonable care and make the argument go away as quickly as you can, and have that in your policy and establish it and enforce it consistently. Some of the things that the ADA are looking for are if you're taking temperatures at different times of day, you might not be getting the same readings, and it could go to medically protected situations rather than should that person have entered the work shift at all. Some of the other things that need to be looked at are going to be the medical privacy. Really suggesting ramping up the training for medical privacy officers in environments so that they can be the gatekeepers of the information and distribute it strictly on a need-to-know basis. When employees also have wind of that gatekeeping, their trust escalates and their idea that they would win an argument starts to dissipate.
Ron, did you want to weigh in? It sounded like you had something to add.
Yeah, I mean, where I am working right now, the general contractor has set up these rules, and people have to abide by them. And if you don't, basically they say you're not going to, you know, it's a matter of policy, as Jessica has talked about, and enforcing it. I mean, we're as the employer, we're living the directives, if you will, and guidance from the CDC and other experts, and this is what they're telling us should be done for the safety of everybody. So I guess I would have to say that if there would be a refusal, that employee wouldn't be allowed to come into work.
I think a number of individuals and organizations can relate to this next question. So this one came in via email. Some of my employees are working from home. If they're injured at home, could this be recordable?
I'm going to partially defer to Ron on this, but what I will say is that OSHA has been very clear that they're not at this time interested in conducting home inspections. However, we are strongly recommending employers to get their policies in order that allow for inspections and hold individuals accountable for safety practices so that it doesn't wind up being a risk for the employer. As far as being a recordable injury, what I know about that under this circumstance is that it would need to be proven as COVID-19 related if it's considered a COVID-19 recordable injury. But as far as just general safety in the workplace, shifting that accountability to the remote worker is absolutely the best practice and can get you out of an argument, or even the high costs of winning an argument are things that you want to avoid. You want to avoid the argument altogether. So get those policies in order.
Ron, I would certainly welcome your thoughts on this, especially given what you do in safety. Do you have anything else to add to what Jessica contributed?
I think she's covered it nicely. This is work at home has been going on and growing for several years now, and there's been a lot of questions that have come up. And there's some tests that have to be applied to an employee that's working at home to prove if it's a recordable case or not. Now, work comp and OSHA record keeping are kind of apples and oranges, but I know under Wisconsin law that work at home injuries can be compensable.
Okay, very good. Appreciate your commentary on that. This is a slightly longer question, but I would certainly be interested in your expertise on this. So this was submitted to us as well. We are a company of 14 people working together on a daily basis, but being very smart with regards to social distancing. If one person were to contract the virus or have a family member that contracts the virus, what would be an appropriate procedure to follow for the safety of all of our employees, causing minimal disruption to our business? And there's a quick follow-up to that. What about being sued from an employee or spouse about contracting the virus as we try to reopen?
I'm hearing a lot of parts to that question, all really good questions and parts of that. So let's start with the legal exposure. The best way to manage legal exposure and to get out of a lawsuit or avoid a lawsuit as best as possible, a couple of things need to happen. One is that we want to be following CDC guidelines, which are changing. How we answer that today may be changing. It will be changing at some point. But to follow those CDC guidelines is, in fact, reasonable care. When it comes down to exposure in family care, sick leave, etc., a lot of that is laid out for us by the FFCRA, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And through that, we're looking at emergency FMLA and we're looking at the emergency paid sick leave. Each of those has its own set of directives and conditions. We're preparing frequently asked questions or addendum policies for our clients that help employees cut through that and be able to make good decisions, and help managers cut through that and be able to make fast, good decisions. I mean, some of our clients are actually working with the most vulnerable population in healthcare. Their questions, again, are, am I short-staffed on CNAs? And does that jeopardize healthcare more than letting somebody in who may or may not be exposed? These are big questions, and it's placing a lot of burden on a lot of companies, but we're finding that if we're forcing the medical certification and we are really abiding by those directives from the FFCRA, we're getting some good framework that we know is going to hold up as reasonable care and will be looked at favorably if it comes to a court situation or a regulatory question. I guess the shorter answer would be, if there's reason to think that somebody's contagious, don't let them in.
Ron, would you like to add some color to that question as well?
the directives, that we understand is that if you have an employee that is COVID positive, that they go into quarantine. Even I'm just thinking of a case with another company I work with where one of the employees was feeling ill, flu-like symptoms, which has later turned out actually to be that, not a COVID issue. But the employer wanted her home. They did not want her there. They wanted to follow the quarantine guidelines. And, that to me is the best answer to that question, from everything we're hearing and more about asymptomatic people that are actually able to spread the virus.
Let's really try to stump these two. I've tried for years to stump these two, and I've been unable to do it, so maybe you guys can. This question has a couple layers to it. I'll read it slow. I know I like to talk fast, but I think this could be a pretty nice. Do we need to hire the exact employees back under the PPP guidelines, or do we just need to hire the said number of FTEs, meaning they do not need to be the exact same people? Lastly, how will employees be affected that do not wish to return to work and would rather stay on unemployment?
I'd be happy to be all over that.
Yeah, that's good. Got on my bailiwick.
We stumped Ron, yes.
No, we didn't stump him. He just passed it over. Starting with the do we need to hire the same employees? No, with a caveat. First of all, I just spent a seemingly ton of time talking about the changes that are possibly in the best interest of business and how we may wish to hire a different profile of employee moving forward in our new business model. And perhaps the people who got us there in the past aren't the people who are going to get us there in the future. And perhaps they don't want to come back and they'd rather be somewhere else. In keeping with all of that, there's a certain amount of transiency and attrition that is expected of businesses. As long as it's a decision that is not made in a discriminatory fashion in any way, but is backed up by here are our new job descriptions, here are our new job requirements, including some of the characteristics that we might be looking for, etc. But you have some framework to document why you made a decision in order to quickly dispel any ideas of discrimination in the choice to bring back somebody and not another, or to hire somebody entirely new. If you look at the PPP and the application, again, that's going to be shaped as we get to loan forgiveness stage. The language that we're currently seeing on that form is asking for payroll numbers, payroll dollars, payroll costs, and the proportionality with some of the other costs that might have been covered under that loan. It's the numbers that are going to be more important than the names. Can somebody still raise a discrimination complaint or an unlawful discharge or something against you? Of course they can. But if you're in good shape, it won't go very far as long as you can back up that it was for business-related reasons and not discriminatory. The second part of the question that I heard was regarding what if people don't come back and whether that's their election or yours. If somebody denies, if they're sitting on unemployment and they deny a recall, unemployment needs to hear from you. That's a game changer. Right now, work search has been waived, but there's no long-term decision that these people can sit around and not work if they're able and offered to work. That still is the goal of the unemployment system from the aspects of many. So they want to hear about that. You may have a complaint that would at least get that unemployment burden out of your pot of the money that affects your own rates for the insurance. You don't want to be footing the bill for that.
That's a very thorough, detailed response, Jessica. I would expect nothing less from you. Ron, and of course I was teasing about stumping Ron. That is not possible. But Ron, was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, that's Certainly, that's more in the employment practices, human resources field, and I'm just one of your lowly safety guys.
You are far too modest, my friend. We love Ron Humphreys. Yes, we do. All right. So we talk about making reasonable accommodations for these employees. So the question was, well, what are reasonable accommodations if any employee is scared beyond reason?
The test of a reasonable accommodation comes down to undue hardship for the company. So it's going to be relative to what the company would need to do. No reasonable accommodation would allow or necessitate a change in the performance standards. And it certainly should come and needs to come with medical certification.
I mean, I could just jump in to say, when we're talking about reasonable accommodation, take a look at all of the things that you've done following the CDC's guidelines. And there's certainly a lot of ingenuity with some of this that I've seen in various workplaces in terms of staggering breaks and, of course, shielding. And I guess it would have to depend, somebody that's just terrified. You're doing everything, again, if you're following the CDC and you're doing everything that you can, that's trying to accommodate. And, if you have a person that's, again, terrified, that's another matter.
Well, and I think we have a follow-up here. So just because we're on the topic, so this comes to us from Robert. Robert, thank you for submitting this. So, Robert, while you were answering that, Ron, he says, thing is, they want to come back, but have been so scared by the media that it's causing too much stress. Yes, they're genuinely terrified. Does that change anybody's answer in any way? Is there anything else to add to that?
I think I spoke to that initially in some of the thought planning that leaders need to be crafting messages with assurances. We need to be debunking some of these myths and understanding what people are thinking. People are thinking all kinds of things. There are some people who are finding strange comfort that will never, ever come out of this. And they're almost unnerved when you tell them that we will or we can. And there are others who are begging for some type of assurances that needs to be part of the business message and how the business is establishing trust with employees. And the same goes for customers. How do you make it so your customers trust visiting you as well? I've seen some great examples of organizations that are very clearly laying out what their plans are for safety, etc. I'm sure Ron is very busy crafting amazing messages for people that help them understand not only how to create that safety, but how to communicate it.
Right, that's a good point. Educating your people, giving them the best news that you can, because again, there's all kinds of spins on this whole thing. Again, sticking to what the CDC is telling us to do and making a sincere effort to do that. These things the experts are telling us will protect ourselves in the workplace and outside.
Well, we might have time. We have time at least for one more question. We did talk about PPP just a few moments ago. So this follow-up question was this: can we hire new people under PPP?
We can, keeping in mind that some of the PPP language does speak to employee retention, and loan forgiveness is not guaranteed. Again, it comes down to scenario planning and doing what's in the best interest of your business and has the best cost benefit analysis. There is a possibility part of a loan would not be forgiven if they decide to look at how many jobs were retained versus new people were brought in. However, the general spirit of the PPP is written with the idea of simply protecting paychecks in general, not any specific individuals. And again, we know that companies need to hire the right people to do the right things at the right time. And it's not in government's interest to thwart business success.
So as much as we'd like to continue this conversation, regrettably, that brings us to 1 o'clock Central Standard Time. Boy, howdy, time flies when you're having fun. But the good news is our ability to learn from each other does not have to stop with this webinar. So on behalf of Jessica Ollenburg and Ron Humphreys, two of the greater people you're ever going to meet, blessed to call them my friends, and everybody else here at the Star Group, thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. Stay safe, stay healthy, and know that we're never too busy for you should you need anything. Thank you, everybody.